In 1939, a young Forest Service smoke chaser named Francis Lufkin sat in the door of an airplane. He wore this red jumpsuit and leather helmet. With only an hour of training, he was ready to launch himself out the door. On that day, the smoke chaser became a smoke jumper. It was a beginning. The history of smoke jumping is dedicated to those pioneers and all of those who have taken up the unfinished job of fighting fire from the sky. These veteran smoke jumpers, wearing the jumpsuits of yesterday and today, made a ceremonial jump from an early Ford trimotor. They guided the parachutes of their eras into a mountain meadow. A personal tribute to those who have lost their lives doing the job of a smoke jumper. You're on board a U.S. Forest Service smoke jumper airplane. This is a practice jump. There is no fire on the ground. The man sticking his head out the open door is the spotter. He's throwing colorful streamers to check the winds. His job is to help us get to the jump spot, 1,500 feet below.
Okay, you're all clear.
Set. Clear. Set. You're clear. Watch out for that. Set.
We need clear.
Clear.
A static line system is used to open Forest Service parachutes. The spotter keeps these lines from catching on anyone or anything.
We run final.
We're approaching the jump spot. The man in the door is our jump partner. When he goes out, we're next.
Check the caffeine. All right, there we are. Got to find my jump there.
This is the ride to work for a smoke jumper. The job of this aerial firefighter is to put out remote forest fires that require hours or perhaps days to reach on foot. If there were a fire waiting below, we could be there in minutes and put it out before it has a chance to grow. It's a great view from up here. The smoke jumper can see the fire and develop a strategy to contain it. But now we must focus on the jump spot where we're about to land. Setting up for landing requires skillful handling of the parachute, and always feet together. This was one out of more than 300,000 jumps spanning 60 years of smoke jumping. Fire in the forests predates civilization. For countless millennia, the forests have burned down and grown back. Fire has been a friend and foe as long as there have been human beings. In 1886, the government created the Division of Forestry to administer timber and fire protection. At that time, Army soldiers were used to put out fires. 1910 was the worst fire season in recorded history for the Pacific Northwest. A firestorm destroyed 4 million acres. 80 people died. Fire became a holy war for the young Forest Service. Following World War I, the Army Air Corps was enlisted to fly fire patrols. By 1925, aerial patrols covered nearly all of the western forests. 5 years later, improvements in technology made it possible to parachute supplies to the fire crews on the ground. Only 30 years after the Wright brothers, the airplane and parachute had transformed forest firefighting. But for those who believed the logical next step was to parachute men into fires, that logic didn't get off the ground with some in the Forest Service.
I'm willing to take a chance on most any kind of a proposition that promises better action on forest fires. But the best information that I can get from experienced flyers is that all parachute jumpers are more or less crazy, just a little bit unbalanced. Very sincerely yours, Evan Kelly, Regional Forester.
The idea of parachuting firefighters was quickly abandoned as too risky. But each summer, the fires came again.
Usually it took you all day or part of the night to get to a fire, you know, way back in the hills there. And that was, time you got there, you done pretty well had in a couple of days' work before you got there.
We'd have a fire reported maybe in 20 or 25 miles. By the time we hiked the crew back, the fire would probably meet them halfway.
A former forest guard named David Godwin started his career walking into forest fires. In 1935, he was put in charge of the new Aerial Fire Control Experimental Project. It began with a failed experiment, using water and chemical bombs to suppress fires. Along the way, the Forest Service bought its first airplane, a 5-passenger Stinson Reliant. In 1939, the project was moved to a small dirt airstrip near Winthrop, Washington. Money from the aerial project was used in a parachute experiment. It was a remarkable decision. Not even the U.S. military had put this much faith in parachutes. At the time the decision was made, Captain Harold King, pilot of the Forest Service airplane, was the only one present with parachute experience. He had one jump. The Eagle Parachute Company was selected to provide the parachutes. They came to Winthrop with a colorful group of barnstormers and professional jumpers. The man charged with the responsibility of finding a safe, practical method of dropping men onto forest fires was Frank Derry.
Frank was a silver-tongued, sweet-talking son of a gun. He talked you right out of your shorts.
Others who joined the project were Glenn Smith, an exhibition jumper and rigger, and Frank's brothers, Chester and Virgil Derry. 2 local men were hired, Dick Tuttle and Alan Honey. Neither had ever parachuted.
They came to see me, and I said, well, I'll come out and talk to you. And I came out here, and 15 minutes after I got here, I was up and down.
Jumping into wilderness forest fires presented a great many challenges to overcome. The first was to develop protective clothing and equipment suitable for landing in trees, rocky areas, and other hazardous conditions. Procedures had to be developed to cope with every possible contingency. It was all new and being done for the first time. There was a lot of trial and error, but here, errors can kill. There were many frustrating, agonizing decisions for these pioneers.
Virgil Derry got banged up pretty good into a tree before they got the masks on him, you know. Skinned the side of his face up pretty good.
Step by step, the new aerial firefighter emerged. 2 Eagle parachutes, a 30-foot steerable main parachute, and a 27-foot emergency chest pack. A 2-piece padded jumpsuit with a high collar. A large leg pocket for a tree letdown rope. And orange streamers to signal from the ground to the airplane. A leather football helmet fitted with a wire mesh face mask. Finally, gloves, logger-style boots, and a knife for cutting away entangled parachute lines.
You didn't know whether the parachute would stand the wear and tear that going into trees and timber.
Near the end of the 6-week project, Lufkin and 4 other Forest Service employees were invited to jump. They enthusiastically accepted. One of those parachutists, Walt Anderson, gave the new aerial firefighters a name, Smokejumpers. After 58 jumps and no serious injuries, the experiment was declared a success, and plans were made to test the concept fighting fires in 1940.
2 jump requests to the Bitterroot Force. Jump aircraft will be DC-3. Jumpers will be Williams, Lee, Hayes, Chef, Petrilli.
It's hard to predict when and where the fire will occur, but everyone knows who's going. That is dictated by the jumper's position on this list. A fire call could take you to a scenic spot in the Bitterroots or to Alaska, struggling with a fire that might go thousands of acres. To many jumpers, this is a kind of fate, dictated by the mythical god of fire, Big Ernie. The ride to work puts the smoke jumper in the back of the aircraft. Frequently, the pilot at the controls is a former jumper.
The flying is a lot of fun also. And every fire is different, whether you're a jumper or a pilot. And it's a challenge that way, and I certainly enjoy that.
You have a certain unspoken thing that occurs between you and those pilots, and that is, we're in this together. They're going to put you where they have to put you. And that spotter is going to do the best job, not the worst job.
You are really focused on where the jump spot's going to be, what the terrain is like, what the fuel is like, what the wind is doing, you know, what are the alternatives, what other ideas, are there water sources, what's the way out, are there trails, are there roads, and how far. And
you lose the fear of jumping out of the airplane. That's like walking down the street after a while. What the real fear for the real experienced jumper is the period between the treetops to the ground. Will you be able to negotiate that space without absolutely presenting yourself an opportunity to get hurt?
Before smoke jumpers can do their job, their firefighting tools, food, and supplies have to join them on the ground. Dropped as paracargo, this part of the job is a team effort between the pilot and the spotter.
There's nothing in my life that was more important to me than to make an accurate cargo drop. To leave the airplane and be on some ridge, and your only lifeline to that's going to be the cargo that's put down to, which include the firefighting equipment and the food supplies and all the things that were necessary to attack the fire. I could, with the slightest amount of error, quadruple their work. Screw up a cargo drop and put it into the trees. The most feared statement you ever got from your spotter when you were dropping cargoes, when the spotter would come up into the cockpit and tap you on the shoulder and say, the next run spurs. Spurs meant that you put the cargo into the trees, and you're dropping spurs now to the guys on the ground so they can get up into the trees to recover your screw up when you drop the cargo.
Putting a fire out by hand is a mixture of science, common sense, and hard work. In general, the strategy is to start digging a fire line from the ignition point up both sides or flanks of the fire. The final and often the most dangerous step is to dig fire line around the moving front of the fire.
We bond through that experience of rounding the corner of the head of the fire and seeing that other group and seeing them coming, and you're coming, and you know that they've put in their part on the left flank and you've put in your miserable night on the right. You've eaten smoke, you've chased spot fires, and now you're coming and it's 2:30 in the morning and everybody's been in the sweat for 5 or 6 hours, and you're going to press it on. And so the guys will begin to call on the radio and make deriding comments about how we've got most of this fire, what have you flatbackers been doing? And then everybody will just start coming together, and in the end they'll come and pinch it off right at the end, and then they'll just high-five and jump around like a bunch of young pups, you know, because it's a celebration of the commitment that we have to catch fires.
A bond forged by a shared commitment to catch fires. It is at the heart of the camaraderie shared by the nearly 5,000 people who have done this job over the years.
I applied for all the bases, and I was aware that there weren't any women jumpers, so I didn't really know what was going to happen. But anyway, McCall offered me a job, so I started working out very hard, and I was aware of the height and weight requirements, neither of which I met.
Deanne Schulman was a veteran of 7 years on a California hotshot crew. But now she faced a 40-year tradition of male-only smoke jumpers.
I passed the PT test, and then Harry Roberts, who was the base foreman at the time, he took 2 of us to get weighed. And I didn't meet the weight requirement, so they told me to go away.
Smoke jumpers at other bases were closely following her progress. One was Alan Owen, nicknamed Mouse.
He was a Vietnam War vet, and he was, I think, 4'11" and a half and weighed about 120. And he contacted me after he heard what had happened, and he was outraged. And he felt that as an American citizen that anybody had a right to try out for a job, and if one could perform successfully, one should have a right to get that job no matter how much they weighed or what they looked like or gender or anything else involved with it.
Aware that some of the male smoke jumpers didn't meet height and weight requirements, she filed a complaint based on selective enforcement of the rules. It was upheld.
She wanted to be a smoke jumper, and she turned out to be a really good one. We were lucky to get other young women like Diane Price and Kim Maynard. What great strides that they made. I mean, they earned the respect of these smoke jumpers.
Each year when summer comes, fire rules your life.
I miss the freedom, because you have no freedom. They own you during the fire season.
For Phil Brolier, the sacrifice was worth it. But after 3 seasons, he was lured away from smoke jumping and into the family insurance business.
I had a business that was doing well, and I was making good enough money, but hey, I was 40 years old, and I guess I was looking for a challenge, and a physical challenge. I've always liked physical challenges.
In 1991, Phil returned to jumping after being away for 17 years.
It was harder than I'd remembered. It's not as easy in your 40s than when you're in your 20s.
4 years later, Phil's son, Jake, became a rookie smoke jumper.
If my dad had never been a smoke jumper, I would probably still be interested in being a jumper. It's just, I like the lifestyle. I like jumping out of airplanes and fighting fire.
In 1996, Jake boosted to Boise, where his father was jumping. Then came a fire call that put them on the same plane. History was made when father and son jumped 3 fires together.
It was really fun. It was in Colorado, outside of Grand Junction.
It was a scary jump, and he hit hard. It was dust flew everywhere. And I ran over there, and that intensity of, is he hurt? And he gets up, smiles, and says, whoa, boy, that was hard. And it was just the relief that he is okay. And then we went to the fire, and we worked with the chainsaw all night long, just an all night, just digging and chainsawing and working. And it was fun.
Yeah, we had a great time. I mean, it was just like we were on vacation. We were just laughing, talking, and I think we were probably annoying everybody else.
Father and son together have reclaimed some of those summers lost to the fire season.
It's something that'll be with us for the rest of our lives. It's something we can talk about, that we shared, and it's special.
The love stick is another recent first in smoke jumping.
They took, the first 6, and then Karen and I then jumped and, been flying around going, oh, I'm okay, how are you, Karen? And, thinking, God, that's cool.
I remember talking to you.
Talking to my wife under a canopy, that was cool. Got on the ground and everybody's like, oh, great, this is the first time we've had a husband and wife. And they called it the love stick. And that's how the fire was, the love stick, even though it was called the Bear Basin Fire.
Gave us the bouquet of wildflowers and then took a picture of us with the bighorn crags in the background.
We were out there, 2.5, 3 days?
Yeah, actually we didn't really see each other on the fire much.
No, we tried to stay away
We tried to
from
avoid each other on fire. I jumped for 3 years while Zach was a toddler, and I felt like Zach needs me, and I'm being selfish with this job, which is a great adventure. But I finally had to say, okay, I need to be a parent first. In a few years, when Zach is older, I think I'll feel the need to come back. I see the DC-3 or the otter flying over when the doors open, and I just know there are bodies up there huddled in the doorway ready to jump out and see great sights and hike into beautiful spots.
They love this job. They've passed by
a lot of other experiences in life to have this, and they wouldn't trade it for anything.
Mike McMillan is an Alaska jumper who has taken his camera along and tried to capture the smoke jumper experience on film.
The experience of smoke jumping is just an exciting way to make a living. Don't know where I'm going to be today or tomorrow. And I think the unpredictability of the job is what draws a lot of people in. Fire itself is beautiful to watch, and it sure makes for good photography.
Each year, some jumpers hang up their whites and go back to the real world, leaving smoke jumping behind.
I didn't realize it actually until I left how much I really enjoyed the jumping.
I think it gives them a confidence and an experience base that you can carry to other things in your life and other challenges, other work.
Former jumpers have gone on to successful careers in business, politics, medicine, and science. The careers of two former jumpers are outstanding examples of that personal achievement. Willie Unsold, a former Cave Junction jumper, led the 1963 Mount Everest expedition that made the first ascent to the West Ridge. Stuart Rusa, another Cave Junction jumper, piloted the command module on the Apollo 14 spaceflight that orbited the moon. Profound technological changes over the past 6 decades have led some to question the future role of the smoke jumper program.
I suspect that the people who started the experiment could never have imagined how this would fit and how it would work and that it would become an institution, which is at the very core of the fire control experience. Time has, if anything, made it even more essential than anybody could have ever thought.
Those who suit up for the fires today share a special bond with all of those who went before and accomplished the job of a smoke jumper.